Welcome to the many interpretations of Lystrosaurus, the apocalypse surviving dicynodont that lived in the late Permian and the early Triassic. There are about 4 identified species of Lystrosaurus, that being L. murrayi, L. maccagai, L. curvatus, and L. declivis. Generally speaking, they do have a similar body plan, but of course, they are different in a few different ways. But overall, we're going to be seeing some pretty consistent designs in this list. Lystrosaurus is also very cool because it's been found in many different continents, and this is because at the time that it lived, that again being the late Permian, early Triassic, all of the continents were together in a supercontinent known as Pangaea. So it's been found in several different places like China or Mongolia, South Africa, and even Russia, which all around is very cool. We have some very cool depictions to dive into, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off with walking with monsters, we have an animal that looks like this, and it looks pretty good. Already we see a lot of the typical anatomical features that Lystrosaurus did have, such as this strange looking skull that is very sunken in, it's very robust. With a beak, it's likely that Lystrosaurus did have a beak, and these two tusk-like structures in its mouth, of course. Now, overall, Lystrosaurus did have a toothless mouth, but it did have those tusk-like structures on its upper jaw. It's also shown with a semi-sprawled stance, which is also true for Lystrosaurus, and the whole body plan seems pretty good. So we're off to a pretty decent start. Also, I really like the CGI of these fellas, and I like seeing them move in a sort of herd setting. It just feels very interesting for an animal like Lystrosaurus. As well as, of course, the practical effects that are always amazing in the Walking With series. It's just as amazing for the Lystrosaurus. So all around, just a fantastic start to the list. Moving on to Animal Armageddon, we have this fella right here that, again, seems pretty good. It's got the tusks, it's got the beak, it's got the semi-sprawled stance, and that very interesting looking skull. I think that most of these designs are going to be remaining pretty consistent overall. Even if they're not, there is a little bit of variation for the different species of Lystrosaurus. So there's a lot of wiggle room, essentially, and so far, these two depictions have nailed it. And that remains true for Leaps of Evolution. We get this handsome-looking fella right here. Also, they do have those stubby tails, something that I have not mentioned yet. The legs look good, the head looks good, love the way that the tusks look, love the way that the beak looks, and I quite like the quality of the CGI. I don't know, there's something about the texturing that really stands out to me that I just overall really like. And so we have yet to find a design of Lystrosaurus that is bad per se, or questionable per se. They've all been, dare I say, good. I'd even say that the Jurassic World Dominion Lystrosaurus is pretty darn good. It might be a little bit different in terms of its skull shape. Like, it kind of seems like it has more of a frill towards the back, which is something that gives it more so like a ceratopsian look about it, which, of course, ceratopsians are reptiles. Lystrosaurus was not a reptile. It was a dicynodont, of course, and dicynodonts are therapsids, and by extension, they are also synapsids, which we are also synapsids, which means that Lystrosaurus and dicynodonts in general are far more closely related to us, to mammals, than they are to reptiles like the diapsids, despite their overall reptilian-like appearance. You know, the further back you go, you know, the closer you get to the point in time when diapsids and synapsids branched off from each other, the closer they seem to look in their overall general appearance. And I feel like that's true with Lystrosaurus. Although I will say they did give it like these sort of bushy eyebrows in the film. And like just some sparse hair here and there, which is something that I think is really fun and kind of hints at its overall more mammal-like nature. I mean, it's not a true mammal, it's simply just related to mammals. So I think that's a fun little addition that kind of helps clue the audience into something like that, even though many probably wouldn't even pick up on that. But I think it's something that's certainly really cool. I like the way that the tusks look, and I like the way that the beak looks. I think overall it's another good design. And in Jurassic World Evolution, I love releasing these fellas. Then next up, we have what might be my favorite depiction of Lystrosaurus, that being life on our planet. Now, this might be my favorite overall adaptation of the animal because of the emphasis of the Great Dying, or at least the semi-emphasis. It would have been nice to see a little bit more of the Great Dying, but it was present here. What is the Great Dying, you might be asking me? Well, the Great Dying, my good friend, thank you for asking, thank you for waiting, is the worst mass extinction that the Earth has ever seen. It is said to be the closest that life has ever come to just being dead, like just being gone, like eradicated entirely. It was likely caused from a lot of volcanic activity, more specifically, a lot of volcanic activity around Russia that just caused a lot of terrible environmental changes and just a lot of it was just a bad time to be alive on the planet. I think there's like a really cool image in the show that portrays what it might have looked like from space, and I'll have that image up here. But what's really notable about the Great Dying is that one of the few types of creatures that survived was Lystrosaurus. There has been Lystrosaurus fossils found in the late Permian when the Great Dying first started, and the early Triassic, which is, of course, that middle ground is when the Great Dying would have taken place. This means that Lystrosaurus troopered on and survived the Great Dying. And what's also really cool about that, or well, also really, really sad about that, is that, of course, not a lot of other creatures survived. So when Lystrosaurus kind of transitioned into the early Triassic, it became the most abundant creature on land. I think it's estimated that they made up about 95% of all of the animals on land, excluding plants and things like that. Because there weren't a lot of herbivores to challenge them, because of course Lystrosaurus is an herbivore, and there wasn't a lot of carnivorous animals to hunt them. So for the time being, Lystrosaurus was the most abundant animal, and I think it's said that they are the most successful animal to ever exist, as far as we know. Anyway, back onto life on our planet, that is showcased here. We see a lot of Lystrosaurus just sort of thriving. They're all just existing and eating their vegetation as if they just survived a mass extinction, which they did. It's very cool. It's a very cool depiction, and I absolutely loved seeing it. That might have been my favorite part of the whole documentary. Just having that emphasis placed onto that. I also do really like its design here. It does have the beak, and you'll notice how the beak is kind of like, its face is really flat, and Lystrosaurus does translate to shovel lizard, something that you could probably link to the way that their face looks. Another thing that is represented in this design, I love the texture of the CGI. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. And their stance looks really good. It seems pretty on point. Like, they're not necessarily dragging their bellies or anything like that, but they're still semi-sprawled. I think it's a pretty good depiction overall. So I quite like them in this. This might be my favorite depiction of Lystrosaurus that we have yet seen. And again, to reiterate, I just love the emphasis that was placed onto them. And then in Ark, the animated series, we get these pretty large Lystrosaurs that look like this. Now, their head seems to be a little bit different, but they do have some of the key traits that you'll associate with Lystrosaurus, like that aforementioned beak and the tusks. And the colors look really cool too. I still have yet to finish this series. I think I've seen the first 3 episodes, and I still have not caught up to it. But I will one day. One day I will. And of course, the animal does show up in the video game. The video game came first with an overall similar design, but I do see, I think, some designs that are a little bit different. But overall, you get the same basic idea, and I think it's pretty good. It's also huge in the video game, as I can tell from this image, that massive. Lystrosaurus does make an appearance in the Minecraft mod known as Prehistoric Nature. Love its design in there. I love the greens and I love the reds on its beak. I also like the counter shading that's going on here. If you've seen my Prehistoric Nature mod review, like creature review, I talk about it a little bit more. I love this mod's designs. These creatures just look fantastic. Really keeping it true to those animals while keeping it sort of Minecraft styled. So that's a decent portion of the Lystrosaurus in media, but I didn't want to just leave it at Lystrosaurus. So another dicynodont that I absolutely love that I had to include in this was Lisowicia. This right here is the Collect A Lisowicia. Lisowicia was a massive dicynodont. I think it goes as the largest dicynodont that we know of in the fossil record. It lived in Poland, of course, and it lived in the Triassic period as well, towards the late Triassic. It's also possible that it was among the largest of the land animals of the time. And you can really see that with this figure right here. It was a hefty boy. Some key attributes that you'll notice with Lisowicia is that beak. Of course, it does have a beak similar to Lystrosaurus. There we go. And you'll notice these right here. These aren't quite tusks. They're definitely not the same structures that you saw on Lystrosaurus. Rather, they're more so just kind of like extra shapes on the beak that formed down a little bit, or just on its jaw in general, making for a very creepy looking creature not really creepy, but just like terrifying to come across. Like I feel like it'd be a lot like coming across a hippo or something like that. That sort of aggressive herbivorous animal. It's also estimated that they had a pretty powerful bite force with this very terrifying looking beak. So yeah, I love Lisowicia, and so not a lot of depictions of it, unfortunately, but there are some really cool ones. First, from Dead Sounds Zoria. Go and watch this series. Of course, I've recommended it several times. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. We get some amazing looking Lisowicia. They're being held by a very creepy faction overall, and their designs certainly do reflect that. They got some really nice kind of green coloration with some purple counter shading. The underbelly is a lot more purple. The whole body looks spot on. The head looks spot on, and the mouth looks spot on. Everything is beautiful about it, and I was so happy when I saw them when I was watching the episode, because like not only did I get Spinosaurus in that episode, but you put Lisowicia in it too. That is so flippin' cool. I loved that so much, and it was just a fantastic addition on Dead Sound's part. So yeah, incredible. Just go and watch it. I cannot recommend it enough. Prehistoric Nature, once again, does have a Lisowicia in there, and everything seems to match up here as well. I love the spots that are present, the base coloration of gray, and you can really see the separation of the beak and that weird-looking tusk-like structure that goes down a little bit more. So it captures everything quite well right here. Now here's the handsome fella in Path of Titans. Of course, this is a mod, and quite a handsome mod overall. I really do love it. I did make a whole video on it, and yeah, I just think it's fantastic. The whole texturing I think looks great. The shape of the skull is quite spot on. You can really see just that very scary looking beak right there. Oh, we just start in the cave now, no matter what. I must not have that turned off. But yeah, no, they did a very good job at capturing an animal that just feels very hefty. You know, just you can really hear those thumps as it's walking around, and it's really good. Even small things like just the bite, like you could just really hear the power that's behind something like that. Really feels like it would be pretty devastating to get bit by something like that. The sounds are also really fantastic too. Probably one of my favorite mods in the game. Just very cool. So those are my two top dicynodonts. Of course, there are more dicynodonts in the fossil record, but these two, I think I was able to offer a lot more insight overall about them, because I love these ones in particular. These might be my favorite dicynodonts out there. Lisowicia in particular being my absolute favorite, one of my favorite extinct creatures in general. So I absolutely had to talk about it, and I'm glad I was able to. Now, I don't know if many of you have heard from my previous video, but I will be taking a break from the many interpretations of, just for about a week or two, and just kind of help me get caught up with other content, because currently I am slowly falling behind, which is truly, you know, it's stressful. Of course, it's been stressing me out quite a bit, but I'm hoping if I take a little bit of a break from this, it gives me more of a chance to get a little bit more caught up. So I won't be putting out a poll this week or even next week, but eventually we will be back to business as normal, or as usual rather. Because I of course I don't want to drop this series entirely. There's still a lot of creatures that can be talked about that are just absolutely amazing creatures and do certainly deserve the spotlight. So, you know, you can keep recommending creatures, and I will take some of those and I will apply them to the poll, and we will get to that point eventually. But until then, again, I will be taking a break from the series. Content will not cease. I will continue the content. It's just this series specifically. Anyway, thank you so much to my patrons and my channel members. You guys are helping out significantly in this very stressful time. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and just thank you for watching the channel in general, everybody. I really do appreciate all of you. Until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.